Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the studios of Calaveras Community Television, where once again this morning we're going to be meeting with Dwayne Onito, chairman of the UPA board. And we're going to be following up on our discussion of just a couple of weeks ago and talking today about financing UPA. And Dwayne, welcome to the show, first of all.
Nice to be here.
And tell our folks, once again, what UPA stands for and how it was formed.
Okay, it's the Utica Power Authority. It's composed of two members from Union Public Utility District in Murphys and the City of Angels and CCWD, a six-member board and that meets once a month and basically controls the 50 more or less cubic feet of water that is now running down Angels Creek.
Okay, by way of further updating, and after all, some of our viewers possibly didn't see the show that we did a couple of weeks ago, let's refresh their memory a little bit about where we are in the UPA 4C PAC FERC process.
Okay.
You have applied, UPA, have applied to FERC for a license, and take it from there.
And basically, it's a NCPA has applied for the upper half of the project, the upper reservoirs, Alpine, Utica, Union, Spicers, to run the upper half of what was known as the Utica project, and UPA, Utica Power Authority, is running the lower half, basically from the tunnel tap, Hunter's Reservoir, on down through Murphys and Angels.
Okay.
And we have a compromise proposal that NCPA and UPA have agreed upon and submitted to FERC, which basically says how we're going to run this system. At the present time, 11 of the 12 parties who intervened on this support the compromise proposal, and the only one that does not is 4CPAC.
Okay. 4CPAC's involvement is critical to you folks at UPA, primarily because of your financial obligations at this time. And that's the main thing we want to center on this morning, because I'm sure that a good many of our viewers are not clear at all as to, A, where the money came from to get into this project, and B, how it is you're going to pay that money back. So let's take it from the top, and by using your blackboard here, Dwayne, why don't you go ahead and begin explaining that to the folks.
Okay, what we're looking at here is the financial obligations of the Utica Power Authority. Originally, the Calaveras County Water District did considerable work, pre-work on this, and spent $640,000 in early negotiations with NCPA and whatnot, and had spent that in staff time. When UPA arrived on the scene, this money was already spent.
Okay.
And CCWD loaned UPA $360,000 to make this a $1 million loan, which is interest-free for 5 years.
Okay.
They then...
And CCWD's interest in doing that, obviously, is that they had become a partner with the rest of the 11 entities, or 10 other entities.
The two other entities, Angel...
Excuse me, 2 other entities. I'm thinking about the 11 entities that approved. Excuse me, the 2 other entities, Angels Camp, City of Angels, if you will, and UPUD, right?
Right.
Okay, so they were a partner in this operation, so naturally... they had a fiscal interest in it anyway. They had the funds. Why not make the loan and you're solvent?
And also, CCWD's charter, and the reason it was created was to protect water resources in Calaveras County.
Okay.
And certainly this is a valuable asset to Calaveras County.
Okay.
So the first $100,000 million is interest-free for 5 years,
okay.
And it is, although there is still some discussion on payback of these various things, that will kick in 2001.
Okay.
They also made available to UPA another $1 million, and that was interest-free for 10 years.
Okay.
And that will kick in 2011 when we will start, 2006, when we will start having to pay that back. To complete the financing of the project, UPA had to get a loan from LaSalle Bank in Chicago at $1,700,000 for a total of what UPA's obligations in borrowed money right now are $3,705,000.
Okay. So in order to pay this money back that you've borrowed to get into operation and ultimately be solvent, hopefully well beyond the minimum of 30 years that FERC could grant you a contract, you're going to sell power. Simple as that.
Correct.
Okay.
And there's possible to sell irrigation water and other things also.
Sure.
So there should be some water sales.
Ancillary sales, sure. Okay, what was UPA's original plan then, vis-a-vis selling the water that you're now going to own?
Okay. Basically, when we set this up, if we could get 2.022 cents a kilowatt hour for this water, we could pay for this project. And hopefully, if we had wet years and everything went well, we would even make some money for the three entities, CCWD, City of Angels, and UPUD.
At 0.022 cents per kilowatt?
Yes.
Okay. Now, obviously, price paid per kilowatt by either PG&E or any other entity to whom you might be selling that power is going to fluctuate from time to time.
It's based on what they call the SRAC, which is the short-run avoided cost of power. And that is based on the cost of gas and oil to generate power, and it is determined, we determine it by the price of power at the California-Oregon border.
Okay.
And last winter, when it was really cold back east and there was a heavy demand for oil and gas to heat the Northwest and as well as the Midwest, the price of this SRAC went up to 0.045
per kilowatt.
For kilowatt hour, and it happened just at the time that we were going through the big 100-year flood here, and so that UPA made out extremely well during that particular time. However, in the summertime and various other times, it can drop down to as much as 0.016. And when it gets down that low, then UPA gets nervous because we're not meeting our goal of 0.22 per kilowatt hour. Right now, because of the loss of water that we have had in the compromise proposal, we are trying to hold our costs, or trying to sell at 0.03 in order to make up for the water that we have lost.
Okay, so you're saying over the long haul, let's say 10 years, if you can average 0.022 cents per kilowatt, you can break even with that. You can pay your obligations and be all right.
Well, we projected that over the 30-year period.
Okay, all right, 30 years then.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, let's visit one more thing before we get on to something else, Dwayne, and that is all of us laypersons who have any kind of involvement whatsoever with energy and energy production and so on just assume that PG&E is going to be buying that power from UPA. That's not going to be true, however, because PG&E's contract is up at the end of this year? Is that it?
The original agreement with PG, when this whole thing was worked out, PG&E agreed to buy our power for SRAC, short run avoided cost, plus 2 mills. So it always adds a 0.002 to the cost of the power, and that contract was to last for 2 years, which will be up this July.
Okay.
Now, we can continue to sell power to PG&E. We have an option, at least for a year, without the 2 mills. Or we can sell it to whomever we can make a better deal.
Southern Cal Edison?
Yes. Or with deregulation, we have been entertaining proposals. We have asked for proposals, and it appears we're going to get at least one other from Enron, which some of you may have been getting in the mail, advertisements saying you should sign up with Enron to buy power. Well, we're going to be they are supposedly going to make us a proposal. So our choices are PG&E that we could sell to, NCPA has to take our power, or we could negotiate another deal.
Okay. The stage, I think, then is set for us to then find out what in the whole scheme of things has changed about this to make UPA say, whoa, we've got to have it the way we requested it from FERC, or we can't make it. Everything up to this point is hunky-dory. You're satisfied, you meaning UPA is satisfied. You can average your 0.0222 over the 30-year span, pay off the loans, and become solvent. Now what happened?
What happens is in putting together the compromise proposal and attempting to satisfy all of various interveners, UPA has been forced to commit water to other purposes other than making power or selling it for irrigation. Committing this water to places that does not bring us in any revenue. For example, in order to keep Department of Fish and Game happy, we had to release 1 cubic feet per second below Hunter's Dam, which means we can't make power in Murphy's and we can't make power in Angels Camp, and the loss of that 1 CSF costs us about $15,000 a year. You multiply that by 30 if this, the license it will be a minimum of 30. Right. It could be 40, it could be 50.
But let's just talk about 30 years for now.
We'll just talk about it in terms of, if we talk about that in 30, we're losing $450,000 out of the income that we would have had here to pay back these proposals.
And that's the result of a loss of only 1 cubic feet per foot per second out of the tunnel tap?
Yes.
Okay.
But keep in mind that that's at the very upper part of the system, and it hurts us when we can't get it through Murphy's and Angels. That when we lose at both powerhouses. And then the Fish and Game and 4CPAC demand that we increase the flows below the Angels diversion, which used to be 0.5, a half cubic feet per second, and they insisted that we increase it to, Fish and Game asked for 5, 4CPAC asked for more than that. UPA finally agreed to 5 on a gut-wrenching decision. There was considerable sentiment to fight Fish and Game on that one. But eventually UPA felt it was the right thing to do was to put 5 down there, and that costs us about $25,000 a year. So you multiply that by 30, and now we're talking about $750,000 plus the $450,000 that we have lost at Hunter's down there, and all of a sudden you start looking at 2.022 as the cost of power. Doesn't do it anymore. So what we have to do is we have to work very hard to get the cost to sell our power at a higher rate. And as for CPAC is asking us for even more water to be diverted, it's going to cut even more into our potential revenue.
Okay, now you alluded a few moments ago, and certainly in our previous show, you also alluded to the fact that there were 12 interveners, and we don't need to name all of them, but one of them was Fish and Game. Now, apparently, you have satisfied Fish and Game's concerns with your agreement for the extra release.
That's correct.
And so out of the 12 interveners, there remains only one who is opposed to you, and that's 4CPAC.
Let me elaborate on that a little bit. Of the 12 interveners, several of them have gone on record as supporting this. But there is a protest period where if you do not agree with this, you have to file a protest. 11 of 12 have either agreed or have not filed a protest, so it is assumed that they are in agreement with this proposal. Only 4CPAC has filed the necessary objections.
All right. Now, as I recall, and I'm going back now several years, probably even prior to the formation of UPA, and as I recall at that time, Murphy's Community Club, Murphy's Business Association, and so on, were in league with 4CPAC because they were concerned they weren't going to get enough flow through Murphy's, i.e. through the park. And it appears as though, and share with our viewers now so that we're clear on that, it appears as though the Murphy's contingent now is satisfied that they're going to get enough flow through the park, particularly in the summertime, to be able to provide the kind of swimming and fishing and that sort of thing that they want to do there. Is that correct?
Certainly the Murphy's Community Club has supported our proposal.
Okay. So it's then to get it back down to this end of the creek, if you will, and when I say this end, I mean toward Angels Camp. Really, the concern then of 4CPAC at this point is below the diversion canal. Is that correct?
Not necessarily.
Okay, all right.
Not necessarily. There is members in 4CPAC who think the flows should be higher through Murphy's Park, even though the Murphy's Community Club has said that the flows are adequate. But there are people in 4CPAC who feel there should be more there.
Okay.
There is the contingent about the idea that we need more water below the Angels diversion, and there is also the concern of a flood control program that somehow UPA should be responsible for creating some sort of flood control plan or this type of thing, which once again means more money, which adds to the debit side, and at the same time trying to take money away from the asset side.
All right. Again, to orient our viewers a little bit better, particularly those folks that live down below Angels or Murphy's, let's say, and may not be familiar with the creek that flows through Murphy's, and at that point is Murphy's Creek and ultimately becomes Angels Creek as it gets down toward Angels Camp. Let's orient them a little bit right now, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but that water that comes down through Murphy's Park in what is known up there as Murphy's Creek comes down below Murphy's and is diverted by the flume that we can see on the grade road, on the Murphy's grade road. And that water is run over into Ross's Reservoir, and ultimately then is used for drinking water in the City of Angels and run through the Powerhouse to generate power.
Correct.
The concern that 4CPAC has is the amount of water that is left in the stream bed, which of course you folks cannot use to generate power with.
Correct.
That is running down alongside their property or within that proximity at least.
It runs down right along Murphy's Grade Road until you get past the windy part, and then it turns basically, I guess, southwest.
Runs out through the Larry Ranch.
Larry Ranch, and comes in and goes down by Highway 4 and comes in right, and then both of them join right there at the Angel swimming pool.
Okay, so you have agreed that you will maintain a flow of no less than 5 CFS. And as I hear this, Dwayne, correct me if I'm wrong, 4CPAC is saying, we're not satisfied with that, we want 10.
Well, no, basically what their compromise proposal now is
8?
Is they're saying 8 in the summertime.
Oh, okay.
May through October, they would like 8, an extra 3 during that time.
Sure, because nobody's really too worried about it in the wintertime. They're going to maintain that 10 or more.
Usually
probably.
our flows are not too high. Right?
All right, so what we're talking about then is another 3 CFS.
Correct.
Times...
Well, $15,000 times 30 years is another, $450,000 that comes out of our assets.
Okay. And so UPA's contention very simply is we simply cannot afford to give you folks representing 4CPAC another 3 CFS, cubic feet per second, because we cannot meet our financial obligations if we do that.
That's correct.
All right, now I think we've got the problem pretty well identified. What's going on right now with respect to how that might be affected? You have made a proposal to FERC.
Correct.
Am I given to understand correctly the 4CPAC has countered that proposal?
Other than they have protested, I don't know that they have countered it, although I would assume that they would be arguing for their latest compromise proposal, or the proposal that they submitted to UPA, which said, hey, we could agree with this, which includes the extra 3 in the summertime below the diversion, the flood control plan, and the extra flows through Murphy's.
Given the fact that you can't speak for 4CPAC, obviously, and given the fact that you're not looking into their brains, What do you think is so important about that 3 feet per second to them that they won't agree to the 5 cubic feet per second?
They feel that, and again, this is, I hate to be speaking for them.
Yeah, no, and I don't mean for you to.
The arguments that I have heard is that
right.
we have taken too much water out of the creek, and it's going to damage the fauna and the flora and things and animals and this
recreation.
I don't think anybody has said recreation because there's really no public access to the stream anywhere. It's almost completely private property all along there, so I don't think that there have been any, at least I have not heard anything about recreation.
Okay. Let's go back for just a second and visit with our viewers about what the consequences would have been had UPA not been formed. Let's pretend now that NCPA, in the absence of any entity like UPA, went ahead, made the agreement to buy PG&E, buy the powerhouse here. They would have shut it down. What would have happened then?
The NCPA proposal said that they would shut both powerhouses, and that the only water that was coming this way, meaning not going through Collierville but coming into these creeks, would be enough water for UPUD, Union Public Utility District and Murphy's, enough water for Angels, plus 10 cubic feet per second, which they would run down the creek at all times. Both powerhouses would be shut. There would be no need, they would have to maintain the Angels diversion to supply Angels Camp with water. But basically the water, other than what Angels needed, would be going down past the diversion, and in the daytime they would run 25 cubic feet per second through Murphy's and right on down the creek.
Now, obviously, UPUD, the City of Angels, and CCWD didn't like that arrangement. Well,
certainly the City of Angels was really upset because with those low flows, they were very concerned that their water was going to get, there wouldn't be heavy flows, and so that whatever came down would never be diluted, and they felt the water quality would deteriorate tremendously, and consequently they were going to be in a situation where they were going to have to really treat their water, and they were really upset about this proposal. UPUD simply didn't like the idea of having, we'd been dealing with PG&E for years, which we felt, except for rare occasions, was a pretty good neighbor, and we felt comfortable dealing with PG&E, or at least there were people who were sympathetic to us. But to have NCPA, an outfit in Roseville that we do nothing about, all of a sudden being able to crack the whip on us really bothered us, and we wanted to have a say in the control of our water. And CCWD, whose charter was basically created to protect water resources in Calaveras County, didn't want to see 70% of this water lost to the county and going through Collierville. So basically, for those three reasons, the groups banded together to oppose, and I might add, 4CPAC opposed this also, even though the flows through their area would be pretty much what they wanted.
Okay. Let's pretend now, because certainly it's all speculation at this point until FERC makes some kind of a decision. And by the way, when do you anticipate that FERC will make that decision?
We had hoped that we were going to get it this summer. We were hoping that in April or May that FERC would come out and hold their public meetings, and we had hoped that we would have all 12 interveners on board, and it would be just a matter of formality to them of going back to Washington, stamping the papers and saying, here it is.
Now you're talking about the coming March and April, or April and May.
Yes,
okay.
or at least sometime this summer.
Okay.
And we had hoped that by fall the license would be in hand. However, as long as 4CPAC continues to protest, it's no longer a rubber stamp type of deal because not all the parties agree.
Okay.
And so now it's going to be up to FERC to make some sort of decision and they can say we need more information. They can come back and say we need more information. We need environmental studies. They can say, all right, we're going to give 4 CPAC the 3 that they asked for in the summertime, and you will keep 35 cubic feet running through Murphy's Park. FERC has the power to do just about whatever they want. The one thing for sure that the protest will do is it will push back the we feel it will push back when the license will be granted. It may be that FERC will simply say, hey, these are great protests and everything, but the compromise proposal is so strong and we have so many people in agreement that, boom, it's going the way it is. But we have no way of knowing, how FERC is going to react.
One last question, and this could be the $64 question. Let's pretend, for the sake of discussion, that FERC approves UPA's request en toto, okay? They give you exactly what you want in the way of flows, and all of a sudden you're just as happy as a clam at high tide, and we suddenly go through another 4 or 5 years of drought. Now, irrespective of what FERC says, or NCPA does, or anybody else, all of a sudden you don't have the flow coming through here and generating the power that you anticipated you were going to generate, and you got to pay these loans. What happens then?
Well, that's why I lose sleep at night.
I see.
Well, there are several things that could affect this. Anything that cuts down on the income. If FERC were to award 4 CPAC the extra flows, that's cutting our income. The drought that you mentioned, how about a forest fire that goes roaring up the Stanislaus Canyon and takes all our flumes and everything out? There are always those intangibles that you try and work around. Basically, if this project gets in trouble for whatever reason, drought, disasters, power plants blow up, whatever happens, then the 3 entities, the City of Angels, UPUD, and CCWD will all have to contribute to the extra cost. And the City of Angels will have to bear 1/3 of it. UPUD will have to bear 1/3 of it. CCWD will have to bear 1/3 of it.
Okay.
CCWD is in a particular quandary because since Prop 13, they can't raise taxes for everybody in the county, right? So the people that they have to collect that from are going to be their rate users if they had to come up with extra cash. And so that people in Valley Springs or Copperopolis or whatever, somehow CCWD will have to make up that extra money. And that's why CCWD has been so concerned and put so much pressure on UPA not to be giving away these types of concessions to various entities. It's why CCWD did not elect Bob Geisler back to the UPA board, because he supported that 5 below the Angels diversion, as well as the cost of irrigation water at $15 an acre foot. Some CCWD board members were very upset that what I feel was the right decision and what we should have done and the right thing to do in these areas. Certainly CCWD did not feel that, and the reason they didn't feel that was, of course, because they're feeling the pressure from their users too, saying, hey, you have this $2 million committed, why aren't these people getting them, you're giving away too much for aesthetic reasons or environmental reasons.
There is a story called The Ancient Mariner. It was written by a fellow by the name of Coleridge that comes to my mind right now, and it's because of the famous saying from that story, water, water everywhere, and not a drop to drink. It's really ironic in one sense that here Calaveras County was, or is, with seemingly a ton of water at our disposal, thanks to the NCPA project, North Fork project, thanks to Maloney's and so on, and yet still in a quandary as to how that water ought to be used. And it's not too difficult to see some of 4 CPAC's side of the coin. And yet, on the other hand, from a pragmatic point of view, if you want to use that water sensibly and properly and have it controlled within the county? UPA is obviously the only answer. Ladies and gentlemen, obviously...
Wait, before
okay.
you close off here, let me, and I know we're probably running out of time, but let me show you just what a good deal this is. You want to know what a great deal this is for Calaveras County?
All right, Dwayne, to wrap up our presentation today, show us what in your mind is a heck of a good deal for Calaveras County.
UPA gets 50 cubic feet per second for $3.5 million.
Okay.
Let's see if we can put a price on what that is worth. Now, we could go down and talk to Stockton East, and they would say, hey, it'll be $32 an acre foot or whatever, but let's just see what it's worth right here in Calaveras County to somebody like NCPA. NCPA is getting 28 cubic feet per second. Their cost in this is 2.5 for their half to PG&E. 1.5, and this figure we need to, it's plus or minus 1.5 million to improve the upper lakes, the recreation, the environmental work. Plus or minus 2 million on the license. I don't know what it cost NCPA to do the license. I know it cost us $1 million.
Okay.
And we didn't even write it. All we did was edit, so I'm going to add another $1 million and say 2 million. So NCPA is into this project for $6 million for 28 cubic feet
per second.
That's about half of what we have.
Okay.
So let's double it on these figure here, whatever, conservatively. That's $12 million that this water is worth right now that NCPA has put out for it, right? That we are getting for $3.5 million. What's it going to be worth in 30 years?
Yeah.
What did it cost us? $3.5 million. I tell you, this project is going to rival the North Fork project for benefit for Calaveras County. This is one heck of a deal.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it from the chairman of UPA, Utica Power Authority, chairman of the board, Dwayne Onito. And Dwayne, we appreciate you being with us once again today and going over these, the financing of UPA with us. And folks, we hope that clears up another part of this NCPA, UPA, FERC puzzle.
4 CPAC.
4 CPAC
CCWD.
puzzle. We, of course, as you've seen by the show today, must tell you that we're still right in the middle of this whole thing. So obviously we're going to be following it through to its conclusion. And as soon as we have some new developments on the part of any of these entities, why, we will certainly bring them to you via Calaveras Community Television. I want to thank our guest today, Dwayne Onito. Want to thank Paul Muller, our producer and director, and our cameraman, Ross Alford. For those folks, this is Merle Luckin. We'll see you on Calaveras Community Television.